Hi, Agnes, we can start. You're muted, Agnes.
Sorry. Hi.
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September IFLA APR Talk and Share. IFLA Talk and Share is a webinar series that brings together a diverse group of practitioners, researchers, and collaborators to explore various topics aimed at advancing landscape design in the region. I'm Agnes So from Grant Associates, where my work has been focused on connecting people with nature, integrating ecological infrastructure and community considerations into design. I'm passionate about creating spaces that not only respond to environmental challenges, but also about connecting people to meaningful spaces. Outside of practice, I'm also an adjunct lecturer at NUS and serve as council member at the SILA, Singapore Institute of Landscape Architects. So tonight I have the privilege of being your moderator amongst old and new friends. Our topic for tonight, Green is the New Smart, AI, Ecology, and Design Trends in Landscape Architecture. We've been told that we have a full house tonight, and I'm very excited for our speakers and panelists to share their insights with us. They bring a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I look forward to our conversation later. We're now live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so please feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comment section on whichever platform you're using, and prepare any questions that you might have during the speaker session, and you can share them during the open discussion at the end of our session tonight. Moving forward, it's time to meet our guests for this evening. Our guests are esteemed and doing some really celebrated and groundbreaking work in Singapore and the region, and we're very glad that they're here to join us tonight. First up, we have Anton Surya. Next slide. Anton is founder and principal of Surya Studio, and he leads Surya Studio, where his studio focuses on performative, blue-green urban landscapes across Southeast Asia. He's got more than close to 20 years of experience and delivered award-winning projects like Tebet Eco Park in Jakarta, Kampong Admiralty in Singapore, and emphasizing climate resilience, biodiversity, and water-sensitive urban design. He prioritizes natural assets and site context, and he executes projects effectively generating urban spaces while emphasizing social inclusivity, functionality, and design aesthetics. Aside from that, Anton also teaches at the NUS Department of Landscape Architecture. Next slide. Joining us today as well, we've got Dr. Irvin Lim, who is currently Senior Lecturer and Deputy Head, Admin and Finance at the Department of Architecture, National University of Singapore. He also teaches at landscape architecture programs where his research revolves around the use of emerging technologies, both reality capture, parametric design, information modeling, things like that, to push the boundaries of landscape architecture. We're looking forward to what he has to share in terms of innovation and technology tonight. Next up, we have our third speaker, Dr. Anush Jain, who is founding director and principal ecologist at BioC Singapore. An ecologist and biomimic, Dr. Anush uses ecology, biomimicry, and biodiversity science to enhance built environments. This is a true scientist amongst us, National Geographic Explorer, award-winning conservationist. He designs themed landscapes like butterfly gardens, leads ecological assessments, and bridges this science to practice through workshops and publications. He also works extensively with a lot of landscape architects and architects in the panel, and he's one of the few trained biomimicry professionals in Southeast Asia. Very glad to have him on the panel tonight. And finally, we have Anna Yap, an Associate Director at Stephen Caffeine Landscape Design Singapore. Anna is an accredited landscape architect and a passionate young designer who is passionate also about ecology and nature conservation. She's involved in projects such as the Learning Forest at the Singapore Botanic Gardens, Round Island Route, Bishan to City Connectors, various public housing estates, and tonight, one of our first marine parks, which she'll share later on in the presentation. Her work focuses on habitat conservation, creating sustainable and enhancing environments that reconnect people with Singapore's nature. Thank you and welcome everyone for participating in tonight's event. So tonight's session brings together a diverse panel of practitioners, and we want to explore different aspects of how landscape architecture is evolving to meet ecological, technological, and social challenges. So please, again, I ask you to share your thoughts in the comment box, and should you have a question, please address them tonight. Please enter your comments, and we'll discuss them later on in the Q&A. And now we'll invite Anton to present. Anton, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I think we just lost him.
Yes.
Maybe we can move to the next speaker first.
Okay. All right, cool. Then we have next up Dr. Irvin Lin. Irvin?
Yeah, okay. Let me just share my screen. I've shared it, but it's not showing up yet. Okay, great. I see it. Okay, we're good to go? Yeah, okay. So hi everyone, my name is Irvin. I am a senior lecturer here at NUS, and essentially I teach digital landscape architecture. This is a diagram that I like to show a lot of my students. And if you are out there, just look at the list of potential digital tools that are available to us and see which one you have actually dabbled in. I personally have not even dabbled in half of this. And that goes to show how many additional things that we can potentially learn from this, right? Personally, I believe there are three main aspects that we need to focus on. One of them is computational thinking, another one is information modeling, and the last one is performative analysis. But it all starts with that digital twin. So most of the studios that I have or the classes that I have, we actually start with digitizing the landscape through various means to get something like what you see on the screen now. On top of that, I'm a big believer in information modeling. I think we should all be using information modeling, similar to what some of the other AEC industry is doing as well. So a lot of the research projects in the past that I've done were specific to vegetation. So how do we create information models for vegetation in various formats? So for example, the image on the top left that you see, that was like 100,000 different trees, right? Most of them with the information attached to them as well. Now, from this information model, rich 3D model, we can then potentially extract certain things, right? And this goes a little bit to my research side on how do we extract some of these kind of measurements from the models itself. How do we then test different scenarios using the model to check on different kind of performative outputs. And also how we use the models for very specific simulations. So in this case, flood simulations in Jakarta. We can also contrast this with urban thermal comfort, and in this case, UTCI or air temperature using simulations as well. Again, using a workflow of using the models together with information as well. So all this kind of accumulates together in the course that I teach here at NUS. This is a level 4, level 5 level course, so it's quite advanced already. It is primarily a little bit about Grasshopper, so we use that as a primary medium of kind of programming and creating some of these tools that we need, because quite honestly, a lot of the tools are not actually available for us landscape architects. So what I do is I teach them using a Miro board. I will share with you a board that you can actually go and view some of these. A lot of these are basically individual videos with attached scripts that the students then can watch and kind of follow along. I split the class into several groups. Each group takes on one of these scenarios, and the kind of pedagogical way that I do it is I will ask them, because these are high-level students, I ask them to design first. So in the first 3 weeks, they come up with a design based on that scenario. I'll teach them the tools, and then they revisit that original design. So I'm going to show you a series of images which are before and after. So red is before, green is after. So these are, again, typical student work that will come out from any design studio, perspective, sections, master plan. And by the end of the studio, all of that gives way to completely different ways of analyzing, testing their designs, right? So it's about slope analysis in this case, about thermal heat comfort, about many other kinds of ways of kind of analyzing it using these digital tools. Another one here, this is looking at using water as a main design element. So again, these kind of panels are things that you see all the time in competitions, in student work, etc. Right? What this gives way to is simulations, right? Over and over again, they will test it again and again to make sure that the water is flowing in the correct way, to make sure that the cooling effects are what they're expecting, to modify the landscape and the topography to exactly what they want. Another clear example over here at the bottom right is this typological method of kind of producing design. Again, very, very common that we see. And this gives way to ways in which we can measure floral Shannon diversity index, measure diversity of plant material, etc., right? I think this is the last one, and the one talking about using water. Again, perspectives that we always see in student work that is giving way to a lot of analysis, simulations, etc., including, in this case, analysis on what kind of plant species will most probably be able to be planted at certain areas. Now, in that diagram that I showed you earlier, this was in 2018, and of course, since then, something really big has come up, and AI has come up. So I'll touch on that briefly as well. This is something that I explored in the design studios as well as in research. In the design studios, I have not found this to be very useful, partly because it becomes this never-ending chat with ChatGPT or Midjourney or whichever other generative AI to kind of come up with ideas, none of which usually kind of work one-to-one. A lot of the times they produce very fantastic-looking perspectives, but spatially and contextually completely wrong. So the one on the left, for example, every single reviewer that saw that immediately picked out the main issues with that particular image. And because of these issues, we have to find ways to force the perspective to produce what we want. And our students have to actually do quite a lot of steps to do this, when in fact they could have spent their time doing a little bit more. What we have also found is that you cannot do any technical drawings. All your sectional perspectives, sections, your master plans, landscape plans, planting plans, any of these technical drawings that we understand cannot be done because the generative AI tools that we currently use are not spatially taught. They don't understand space in the way that we do. Similarly, we have a lot of problems with students going to Midjourney and then creating fantastical images and then limited by their modeling skills because they can't convert that image into an actual model. The one on the right is actually not too bad, but again, she struggled a lot to get to this stage even. And a lot of them are actually blinded by this AI workflow, so much so that they put design as a back burner. In this particular case, again, the images look fantastic, but I question the mushroom-shaped pavilion of which he had no kind of answer for it. One of the biggest problems I find is that at least the generative AI tools lack this phenomenology, which is basically our experience of space, right? And it really can't capture that in the way that we think it can. That said, on the research side, I found this to be much more useful. So in this case, one of the first examples I did in 2019, using AI to differentiate between wood and leaf in terms of point clouds. Some of my students later on use AI to determine classification of images as well as depth. We use this to then classify landscapes into kind of different categories in terms of naturalness, wildness, etc. We use it to work out whether or not landscapes are evenly distributed. In this case, visually they're not. And where do we go to now? Because we're running out of time. I do believe that we definitely need to move towards 3D. GIS was, 3 or 4 decades old. We need to move into 3D kind of modes of representation. And it should not be about the final perspective. We should think about performance. We should think about information modeling. And of course, we do all this to kind of cross over into other disciplines as well. But I do think that the designer still has to remain in control over the technology itself. And we really should not let technology control you. So I'll end off this with this QR code. If you're interested, you can scan it. It will bring you to the page on the right And in that has a lot of videos and scripts that you can kind of self-learn if you are interested in doing some of the things that I've showed you earlier. And I think that's it. I hope I am on time.
All right. Sorry. Thank you, Irvin. That is a very exciting presentation.
Okay.
We'll leave the questions in the next
Right.
segment.
I'll stop the show now.
Yes. And now we move on to Anton. Sorry about a technical error earlier. We now have Anton back to present. All right, Anton, take it
All
away.
right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
How about now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for the time. I'll go very quick because I have 4 projects to present, and this is really related with the water sensitive design in urban context. So over the last 5-6 years in my practice, I focus a lot on the projects in Southeast Asia, particularly in context of Indonesia. And the 2 things that we always concern is really about urban flooding and the water resource pollutions that happens in the coastline or in the riverside, right? And this also relate with our profession as a landscape architects, that we help to build these cities. We do the planning, we do the design of the landscape from small to building scale to the master plan. And I really want to share what is the role that we can take as a landscape architects to help in mitigate this kind of rapid urban development, mostly in developing countries like Indonesia, maybe Vietnam, maybe Bangkok, right? We have always have a problem with high density population, urbanization, where the river are turned into the concrete drain, shit past. The idea is to prevent floods and discharge the water as fast as possible to the sea. But the problem also, we have a lot of illegal settlement sit alongside the rivers. And when the water is poor quality, people will just throw rubbish, right? So we have 2 problems, flood and waste issue. The other thing is about the sea level rise, where we block the inland from the rising sea level, right? And we create a lot of barriers and detach the mangrove from the sea. So these are the real problem that recently happens, as you can see in Bali, where there's a huge high storm events that create a flooding everywhere in the city of Bali, damaging the building. A lot of people relocate, right? So this is because of the rapid urbanization, a lot of things being built without considering to the environment impacts. Yeah. I go to the next slides. Sorry. So our approach is always try to restore the land, connecting the blue-green, creating biodiverse environments, and create a space for people living in this, respecting the waters and vegetation. One of the projects that we completed earlier in Jakarta about 3 years ago is the Tebet Eco Parks, and this has shown an exact example of how we deal with water, create a nice place for people to respect the waters, and the water become the core of the development. It started with when the project was completed, about 60,000 people occupy or come to the parks, and this create a lot of virus, and the space is just not designed for many people like this, right? So the idea is really about we respond to the problem of the site, which is it has inadequate canal capacity, wastewater discharge, and easily flooded just within a few hours of rain. So that's the things that we want to tackle the most important, how to deal with the water resource, how to deal with the pollution. So we change this dry land, flooded land into a blue-green open space that allow people to use the space, allow people space that can attract biodiversity. We did a hydrology simulation. What is the existing condition versus the renaturalization profile, and it's shown with the renaturalization profile, we can absorb more water and provide lesser space to be flooded, and while allowing more hydraulic capacity, porous embankment, using soil bioengineering to replace the existing concrete drain. So this was the existing condition with the straight drain connect to the main rivers. We make it meanders, and we put a lot of activities around these rivers using riparian plants to filter the waters. And the things that we took from the site, we reuse as part of the bioengineering from gabion walls, ripraps, and protect the vegetation as much as possible. Put a lot of context with plants. And with this concept, it has been proven there's more habitats, more animals that come, even it's a small scale as compared to many other large projects. But it shows that people are being aware of the concept of integrating water and vegetation design for peoples, and also providing a lot of space for water parkings, right? Means detention during the high storm events. Water are detained in many different spaces, and this shows that the difference before and post construction. It used to be the water is flooded the street, and now is contained within the parks. So along the spine of the water, we create a lot of activities. So it changed the mindset. The water used to be avoided and used to be thrown with rubbish, and now we come a place and the water that is embraced by peoples. And also, when I look at these two images, when I visited the parks, and after that, we look at the peoples that the children that have a contact with waters, and this is the changes, right? Water is now burden, but it become a resource to be cherished when we integrate with the blue-green design. And that project inspired the private sectors, right? This project is come after the Tebet Eco Park. It's the same thing. Over 3 kilometers of concrete canal is being constructed with a similar design like Tebet Eco Park used to be constructed. So we have a rubble wall with concrete, and our idea is to renaturalize, not fully, 50% only, because the cost will be very high. So we managed to convince the developers that don't go for the straight canals, but combine it with natural vegetation, create a reconnection, create a blue-green design. And this is the impression that shows that when we have this wider space, we can allow for water more for detention. And along this green spine of 3 kilometers become a place that people want to get in contact with the waters. So this was the rendering before when we presented to the stakeholders, and just within a year time, they agree, and we construct this space that avoided the concrete canals using gabion, using wetland island, ripraps, and working with the local contractors to make it as much as possible to be natural. You can see the difference here. It used to be straight, and now we have more space for the water to be contained. And the beautiful things about this is plants is always grow, tree always grow, and with the times, it getting larger, and we can see that people are going down and have a contact with the waters, and we see a lot of butterfly, birds, and so on around the islands. Next project is the arena like site. This is more like commercial compound next to the golf course. It used to have a swampland with an existing mangrove, and this was the condition when I visited the site, right? And we have this beautiful mangrove that almost be took up, and we see a lot of birds, fishes, and so on. And we tell the clients that we have to keep this mangrove, right, and to be integrated with their commercial development, because we see there's a lot of herons and so on. So the idea is really doing a revegetation along the mangrove edge, keep the water. We don't change the pond into the liners. We keep as it is and keep most of the existing trees within the pond area. So this was the rendering we showed during the concept design. So it's really the mangrove become the core of the commercial complex. And this was after the completion. So we have all the building is facing this mangrove. So when you have a dining here, you can face the mangrove and you can have a jogging track around it. And it is just a few months after completion. We have a swales that manage the runoff, and we have the mangrove that is thriving using the existing waters. And we increase more water because all the runoff from the building is discharged here. And we can see that people are really enjoying their time here, have a dining and activities around the mangrove, and even ducks swim around the waters. So this has proven that keeping the existing re-enhancement, it can create a better value for the commercial developments. And this one is Hotel Indigo and Holiday Inn in Bintan, recently completed also early this year. It used to be a development next to the coastline with natural creeks running within the developments. So what we do is when we visited the site, we came halfway when the building is almost completed, and we face a lot of problem with the bauxite soil, harsh coastal climates, and no existing trees at all within this 10-hectare site. So the original master plan is to have water within the buildings, but with the challenge of bringing the plants, creating water, that is really challenging projects. So our scope is doing the design of the sourcescape and water management. So we managed to plan for all the runoff to be discharged to this lagoon, to be kept clean, stored, and reused for maintenance, and before it discharged to the sea. So it is a responsible resource that try to manage their own water resources, right? And this is the result. So we have a lagoon that connect the two different hotels and become the main landscape features that storing the water, clean the water, and before we discharge to the sea. And this shown the image of during the rain time, where the water going through the rain garden, get it clean, and the water is increased up to 0.5 meters before we discharge to the sea. With the biotopes, this is the rendering. The idea is really to have a last vegetation, and this is the result within a year time. And you can see during the rain time is a beautiful place for people to enjoy. We have biotop that keep cleaning the water with some natural constructed wetlands. And also we have a fish pond using a natural plants and natural filtration for the koi ponds. And the result is amazing. The water is thriving, and the guests can walk around this resort. It attracts a lot of biodiversity. We see amphibian, avians, aquatic, all comes alive within this resort. And this project shows that when we give time to nature, and everything will complies within the time. When we just need a soil, we just need plants, we just need water, and we can create a very beautiful environments for people to engage with the landscape. So these 4 projects, I think, is a project that has been proven that when we can manage the water, put the right vegetation, put a space that accommodate many people's recreational activities, it can be an amazing project in the urban context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anton. That was very interesting. I'm sure we'll have more questions for you shortly. And now we will hand the mic over to Dr. Anuj. All right. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, are you able to see that?
Yes, perfect. Over to you.
Can you hear me though?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. Oh, I think you need to share your screen again.
Okay.
Sorry. The screen is shared. You just need to turn into presentation mode.
Will do. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to talk about unequal greens. And my lens is going to be very much on ecology, where we are, building on some of the wonderful work that Anton shared. And Irwin, of course, brought it to a different context. How do we think about nature, specifically biodiversity, right? And how do we prioritize different shades of green, kind of beyond what meets the eye? Okay. So first off, I think that we have an inherent love for nature, don't we? We know it sustains us. We feel relaxed whenever we walk around nature. And be it a kid, be it an adult, or someone older, I think all of us feel a healing effect towards nature. And there are studies that back it up, right? Living near green spaces makes you younger, which when I learned about it, I was amazed. Like, wonderful, I should really live next to a forest. And it also has financial benefits. So not just healing, not just biodiversity, it makes financial sense. So in short, biodiversity and nature really has multifaceted benefits that sustain us. It provides us livelihoods. It also provides a lot of ecosystem services. For those of you who might be new to this term, this is an umbrella term for things that nature does for us for free. Things like providing us with clean air, providing us with food, clean water, etc., etc. Countless benefits. And we think of it simplistically, breaking it down into things we like, we love, and can see, touch, and feel, like less maintenance for our plants. A wilder landscape needs to be maintained less, or sequestering carbon, regulating climate better, or providing better well-being. So while we know all of these wonderful benefits, including those in cities, we've not been able to enhance nature to the point, that brings it equal to financial benefits. Slowly, there have been many incentives as well. We are all familiar with different incentives around the world. In Singapore specifically, there have been things like the Green Mark, which has incentivized many types of greenery. Then there's been skyrise greening efforts that has really brought vertical greens and rooftop greens to dense building developments. But as we've been pushing this, we've come to realize that despite all this effort, right, we continue to lose nature. There have been drastic declines around the world. In the US, there have been 45% declines in 40 years, largely due to pesticides. And similarly in other parts of the world as well. The declines have been drastic. Nat Geo even ran a feature that we will miss these animals when they are gone. So slowly but surely, as we've come to realize this with climate change, the world and cities are changing, right? Nature has become more and more integrated these days, and I think the landscape architects speak to this. Anton showed some wonderful examples as well of integrating boardwalks, different playful landscapes, all through water and very beautifully. And that means nature's coming back. Squirrels are back, monkeys are back, monitor lizards, otters have been a success story in Singapore, so on and so forth. And through those efforts, the landscape industry has also moved, right? There's been the Landscape Excellence Assessment Framework by NParks in Singapore, and that is one of my favorites because it begins to value landscape beyond the traditional, green plot ratios. It finally begins to care about biodiversity considerations, whether we could have more native species, and then you get valued, whether you have biodiversity impact assessments and you get extra points, and are you designing better to manage glass facades? Are you managing lighting better? So as we begin to incentivize these design for wildlife, I think designing for biodiversity becomes integral. But what's next? Can we do better, right? I think some of you may be familiar with new conversations in this space. There is the Biodiversity Net Gain Framework, which became popular in the UK a couple of years ago and has been mandated there since 2023. And this has been a game changer because the Net Gain Framework really allows us to look at biodiversity in an integrated way. It says quantify the baseline biodiversity through simple metrics, and then allow your new development to actually show a net gain. Now in the UK, new developments are now mandated to show at least 10% net gain, which means you have to design better than what you were before. Right? In Singapore, such metrics have also been developed. They are optional, but I think there's a momentum for us to use more and more of these metrics and therefore integrate biodiversity into the planning processes. So in our firm, BioC, we really like to think about these as opportunities. We were set up in 2017 to bridge this gap that exists between the built environment, architects, and nature, right? And we work across different scales, from master planning all the way to restoration projects. And here I'd just like to highlight something we've been doing on constructed ecosystems. On the same vein, how do we integrate nature more seamlessly? And when we think about these constructed ecosystems, the words come to mind are ecological design, function. And in doing so, we really want to integrate all of these things that nature does, right? Better pollination, natural mosquito control, seed dispersal, restoring food webs, etc. So a project that I was involved in some years ago was looking at, designing a butterfly trail. This goes way back 15 years ago, where we looked at Orchard Road and we identified key pockets which could be changed by careful design, by understanding what butterflies need, what kind of plants, other landscape features might they need, and planting them in disused spaces. And that really changed back then from becoming a shopping strip to a nature strip for Orchard. As we explore these ideas even further, we felt, okay, let's go vertical and be more creative. So worked on different bug hotels. This is an example in Labrador Park. And then played around with vertical butterfly gardens. So there are green walls everywhere. How about we integrate nectar plants, host plants on vertical surfaces? And this is an example we did in Tuas, in a Blue Connection factory, and this is still live and running. So that allowed us to see that actually nature can be integrated in more creative ways, and which gave birth to this project that I'm quite passionate about, called the Totems for the 21st Century. Now it's currently being exhibited in the Art Science Museum in Singapore for the next 5.5 months. So if you are around town, please go take a look. On screen, you see different kinds of structures, which are both beautiful and hopefully functional. There has been a lot of science and testing behind this, and you see, as a result, these structures having nesting cavities, holes for bees. They've been bees and birds designed specifically for different animals. A collaboration with Woha architects and the manufacturing company Systems. We're very excited about this because through this taxonomy, we are able to cater nesting spaces for different animals. And you might ask, why these structures? Of course, can't you just put up your regular nest box? And sure, we can. We started there, and the picture on the left is actually at my house, where when we started, I was curious about what if we painted nest boxes with different colors? Would it still attract birds? And what does that mean to the design language for architects, right? And that grew to an idea where architects such as Woha, wanted to create structures which are more long-lasting, durable. Because we know traditional nest boxes don't last very much, and they are inexpensive, but someone has to go and change them all the time. And so, how about integrating newer materials, more durable materials? And that's what we did. We created different prototypes and tested them out. This is actually installed in my backyard, and we ran it for several years. It attracted different kinds of insects. No birds in that box yet, but further prototypes have. And then it led to a final installation at Woha's office, which has been up for 1.5 years. So from that experiment, we also started to think about, bigger questions. What if nature becomes mentor? And how can buildings actually, be more integrated? how can they act like forests? Again, we worked with Woha on this Oasia hotel downtown, assessing its value across different years. And that really is almost like a vertical cliff that is cladded with nature, right? And then we asked, can a building breathe like a living being? And with that question, we actually designed these elephant skin inspired tiles, which have the texture like elephants. We've studied the deep patterns that are on these skins, embedded them on facade tiles, in this case on mycelium, which can grow, which can breathe life on the skin. But then we've looked at things beyond. There's a toolkit that we released in 2023. If any of you is interested, please look out for this QR code. But that story has moved, right? And we've installed these elephant skin tiles on facades near our office and also in university campuses, and we are really now thinking of scaling this up as a biomimicry solution to cooling, which is so pertinent these days. I think my last slide, or second last, is to think about bigger questions. Creating infrastructure we saw in cities, but what about thinking about climate change? For coastal wildlife. This is not my design. Photos from Living Seawalls project in Australia. And they've been doing a wonderful, wonderful job of actually 3D printing these structures and putting them on coastlines, and has led to rapid recruitment of corals and other marine organisms. People have also tried to 3D print coral reefs. And while that is sad, it has become a reality given so much is being lost these days. It's almost like a philosophical question. Should we protect or should we create more? Of course, we should protect when we can, but where we can't, what if these new solutions can bring life back? My last slide, as we've been experimenting with these, we are also quite excited about this framework, which we developed again with Woha, looking at assessment for buildings. Here we looked at 5 of their award-winning projects in Singapore: hotels, residential, towers, all the way to enabling village, which is low rise. And this was multifaceted, looking at biodiversity benefits, temperature and cooling benefits, ecosystem services, carbon, air filtration, but also social. How do people perceive the greens? If any of you is interested in the results, I'm happy to share. But through all this work, we were able to show that, in fact, even buildings like Kampong Admiralty can house more than 200 species, insects included, in its footprint, which was mind-boggling. And that gave us a typology and an understanding of what is possible if buildings are designed well. This became an Earthshot Prize nominee, and we're very excited to bring this forward to other cities and perhaps to other typologies as well. I'll end there. I'm happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Anush, for the presentation. Very evocative. I'm sure the panel will have more questions. The audience will have more questions for you later. And again, a reminder to everyone, if you have a question for our speakers, please, we will be addressing them at the Q&A session at the end of the session tonight. All right. And now we move on to Anna, our final presenter for tonight. Anna, over to you. Can you share your screen, Anna?
Yep, I think it should. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's nice that Anush kind of ended it with the marine tiles, because I'm going to talk about Sisters Island Marine Park, which is Singapore's first marine park, which is open in last year, 2024. So I will go through very quickly. Sisters Island is actually located in the southern islands of Singapore. So this is Singapore. This is really at the bottom tip of it. So Sisters Island is actually consists of two islands, the small Sisters Island and the big Sisters Island. And the completion is around 2023, but we opened it officially last year. So in terms of what we look as a landscape architect that is given this project, what we actually really want to do when we got this project is really to look at how we integrate the marine environment and the terrestrial environment together, so that when the visitors explore the island, they can actually discover both worlds just on one single trip to Sisters Island. And then besides that, because this island itself is has a lot of fragile environmental aspects, so we also committed to actually make sure that during construction there is very minimal environmental impact, and also to maximize the habitat restoration and biodiversity. So I will go in very quickly because I only got 10 minutes. So we also do actually kind of tie in a little bit with the research to enable, besides having it as a public space, researchers will also have some certain areas where they will be able to do marine research. And also because the island is actually offshore, we are also looking at how the park can be maintained in a sustainable and in a low maintenance fashion. So I will go through the key features, which consist of some of these few elements, and then maybe just bear in mind the key takeaways, because I think as I go through the slides, these four key takeaways will actually keep emerging. So I'll bring you guys through the arrival of and how you can explore the island. So first up, of course, is the arrival plaza and the pavilion. So as you come in from the jetty, as you take a ferry from the mainland to Sisters Island, you actually land in the jetty. From there, you actually come in toward to a arrival pavilion, and then from there you can actually explore the park entirely. So the arrival pavilion is where the first main stop is. So from there, you actually see that, your first thing you encounter is really the arrival pavilion, where is a summary of what you can actually find in Sisters Island. So you will see a star-shaped floor pattern. From there, you will see five different categories of the marine life that you could actually find within the intertidal zone. And then from before, you will see, then after that you can actually explore on while having this brief summary in mind. So in terms of the arrival plaza, we do have a lot of features, a lot of detailed features that actually feature the marine elements that you can find, so that people will actually be interested to know more. And we actually make this spot photo spots, and also making it Instagrammable, so in a way that people will be attracted to it, to actually want to explore more as they go through Sisters Island. So as you go in after the arrival plaza, you actually reach the toilet and the changing building. When we designed these toilets, we also work together with the architect to actually ensure that everything is naturally ventilated. There is no electricity needed. There is solar tubes that actually enable lights going in during the daytime. It's naturally ventilated to make sure in terms of the circulation is sufficient. And in terms of the placement of the building itself, if you can see in the slides, we actually kind of avoided most of the mature terminales that is on site when we actually cited where this toilet will be. So I mean, it's internal, one of the inside consultant thing that we always like to say, that the view from the toilet building towards the sea for Sisters Island is one of the best in Singapore, because once you look back, you can actually look at the mainland Singapore. Then from there, actually, if you go in even from where we continue in terms of the details, you can actually see a lot of floor inlays that really displays the marine life that can be found within the marine park. So all these buttresses that you see over here is really we do realignment on site to make sure that we do not affect them during construction. And then we have continuous rain chain that is of different details and of different animals that you can find in Sisters Island. So yeah, so as you continue walking on from the toilet, you actually see a desalination plant and the water tank. Okay, so how this desalination plant and water tank work is because of Sisters Island being an offshore. I mean, there's a constant need for fresh water to be there in order for cleaning and whatsoever. So to actually make it a little bit more sustainable in the long run, we actually use a reverse osmosis system to actually convert the seawater into a fresh water. So for the desalination plant, is one of the method that we are using to actually reduce the high cost and the logistic required to actually transport potable water to the island on a very frequent basis. And this desalination plant is actually also run by the solar farm that is actually located slightly further off, where we actually have 88 panels to actually run the entire system. So in a way, the what is needed within Sisters Island, we are actually trying to have it self-sustainable, self-sufficient in the long run. So we did a very quick calculation. I think with this solar farm and the desalination farm, the system will actually pay for itself if we offset with needing to bring barges in with fresh water and whatsoever. The system will actually pay for itself within 2 years. I think that is also one of the reason why the client, which is National Parks Board, is also inclined for us to put this system on the island. So that is the sustainable part of it. As you can see in the photo on the left, there's a small little bat houses. I will go to that in detail in the subsequent slides. So as you go from the solar farm and the where most of the amenity is, you actually reach the Eastern Lagoon. So here actually is where is one of Sisters Island main intertidal zones. So here you actually see a lot of range of intertidal marine animals during the low tide. So, but this lagoon itself is actually more focused for recreation for visitors. So you can actually swim, picnic within this area. And parks actually do guided intertidal walks within this area. So during the low tide, this area is actually quite rich in biodiversity. So if you do see there are some annotation within the bunds, which is the marine tile location. That's why it's pretty interesting what Anush presented just now in terms of the 3D printing. What we did here for the marine tiles, there is some details I will be sharing soon as well, where we actually work with NUS to actually do some to implement all these marine tiles. So within Sisters Island itself, there's a lot of collaboration between the NUS research and also what we can implement on site. So then as you go on from the Eastern Lagoon, we go in towards the Western Lagoon. So this one is while that Eastern Lagoon is more catered to recreation. Actually, this area where the tidal pool is really more focused more on really the environmental and the habitat creation. So here, what we actually did is we actually introduced the low breakwater. So if you see, this is during the low tide. So this low breakwater actually allows retention of the seawater during the low tides to promote growth of mangrove that is at the site over here. So this small cluster of mangrove planting is something that have also been trying to establish. So what we did is actually during this project, Sungai Buloh actually did give us some sapling, where we actually have this fence to actually acclimatize the saplings so that they can grow, because there's different condition between Sungai Buloh and Sisters Island. This allows the sapling to actually to establish and actually hopefully continue to expand the mangrove area. So this was the beginning. Then I think subsequently, after a few months, when they start to grow a little bit, and establish roots by itself, we actually removed the fence step by step. So it was in bags at the top of the shore. Then we eventually slowly moving it down, and then finally is actually planted in the water. So that is for Western Lagoon. Um, so as we go in, I mean, that is really all the marine habitat that we are looking at for Sisters Island. Besides the floating boardwalk, I will also go there soon. I will touch on the island itself. There's both the marine and terrestrial environment. So now I will talk through the forest ecosystem a little bit more. So there is also a trail that goes up to the hilltop, which is we call it the Ocean Network Express Coastal Forest Trail. From there, we actually do a lot of pegging and alignment of the path and the staircase on site to actually prevent cutting of unnecessary trees and to keep the mature trees there as much as possible, because Sisters Island is also a hotspot for birds. So you can see it's really shady even though it's just built. And then at the hilltop, there's actually a hill top deck that you can actually oversee the floating boardwalk of the Sisters Island Park. And then then from the other side, I think one of the main highlight of Sisters Island is really the floating boardwalk. So for the floating boardwalk, is 220 meters long, with 9 floating pontoon. Then you can actually see there is a moon pools and then 2 gangways that actually connected it. So what is really special about how we approach the floating boardwalk is really the sensitivity during construction. uh, we actually the positioning of the dolphin piles is actually really put in to avoid all the coral reefs as much as possible. And then the floating pontoon actually comes in module. So what happens is during the construction, the contractor will just need to come in and then fit in every module by itself and then put in the 2 ends, and then they are actually done within a week or 2. So in terms of the interfacing during the construction, there's a lot of coordination to make sure there is really, really less impact on the environment. So I will go in towards the floating pontoon. It's not just a typical floating pontoon. Here in Sisters Island, we actually incorporate GFRC panels with metal mesh that actually encourage corals to actually grow on it. And it's also a way to actually for researchers that if let's say they want to try coral reef nursery, they can actually try tying the corals and let it grow. So these are some of the things that we put in. And another reason to actually put it near the boardwalk is also so that in terms for the public to actually know what to know and learn more about the marine environment. So and when you're standing there on a clear day, you can actually look down and look at all these GFRC panels with corals on it. So so that is and then the other feature along the floating boardwalk is really the moon pools. Okay, so these moon pools are really area for researchers to actually do their research. So the moon pools currently now is used for mineral accretion to promote coral growth. So this is actually is restricted access to the public, But while you walk through the boardwalk, you can actually see what is happening within these moon pools. So this is really effort to actually promote not just education, but actually to have a space for research to be integrated together in the overall design. So yeah, so this is really the construction of the floating boardwalk that I mentioned. So in terms of the construction access is very limited. So even where the crane is parked to do the floating boardwalk is all planned out to avoid all the coral reefs. The dolphin piles is actually located based on the position of the coral reef area, and then yes, uh, and then the installation is really done in modules so that it can be quick. So it can be quick and fast and still and nice. So in terms of the terrestrial biodiversity enhancement, I think we do the wildlife house typically, because I think one of the things that we are looking at is really to to reuse the logs that we fell. So this is some of the wildlife house that we have on site. And this is a wildlife resort. I think it's something that we are trying in our office. We are doing it to actually have a wildlife resort and yet making it sculptural, so that it is exciting and attractive to the public, in order for them to really want to know more and to learn more about the environment. And then there are also various type of different bird houses, I would say, that that's implemented, like the kingfisher burrow. We actually have one really made kingfisher burrow, understanding how kingfisher burrow work, to make sure that it will be used by the kingfishers. And then we do have bed box and bee boxes. Yeah, I think Anush mentioned previously. Yeah, in terms of the wood and all. I mean, in our office, we also try to keep upgrading the details so that it can last longer, and there's no need to keep replacing it. And I think this is one of the other one that is more interesting, which is the marine tiles. We do have it around Sisters Island. We have two type. One is the hexagonal shape type, which is installed on the seawalls itself, while there's one sea urchin type, which we actually install in the lower parts of the seawall. So the shape is slightly different. All this, we're actually working together with the NUS team to really get the dimension correctly, to get the shape and the kind of opening that is required to make sure the efficacy is there. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the shelters. I think a lot of things that we do in Sisters Island is prefab. We use different colors to actually bring attention, to actually make it something that people want to take photo of, people will be curious of. These are some of the things that we put in. Is easy to construct, but yes, making an impact in the project. So yeah, I think that concludes it. So if you do see this photo, the top one is the photo taken before the construction work, and the below one is the after construction. But you do see, in terms of the tree coverage, there is very minimal crown reduction. So we are really trying to do a redevelopment, upgrading Sisters Island Marine Park, keeping as much biodiversity while reducing the construction impact as much as possible. Yep.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. I think with your presentation, we've sort of come full circle from the start to the end. Thank you so much to our speakers for the really beautiful presentations. I think, I was just recapping the breadth of knowledge that's been shared tonight, starting from Irvin's research in digital tools, him talking about the need for computational thinking, informational modeling, and performative analysis, and then going to Anton and seeing how these tools are actually being applied in his projects, to change developer mindset, not just social mindset, but also develop perceptions. I think that's really, really powerful. I still want to see the hotel. Not yet, but I really want to see the hotel. And then coming back to then Anush and and your work, the way you spoke about nature and biodiversity being very healing, but then using these very concrete and scientific tools to reshape the environment. And I see Oasia Hotel every day, and it's really a piece of art that changes. So I get what you mean by it being a breathing architecture, because it changes with light, it changes with the environment, and you almost feel that you can start feeling that the building itself is almost a living thing or a human being. And then finally, shifting again scale to Anna's, you can see that, from within the marine park, research and design is so integrated into the way, into the structure and the design details. And I think previously we spoke about education. I think Anna touched a little bit on education, and the education is really down to details on various scales. And so I think there's such a rich volume of information and knowledge that's been shared tonight. And so we'll move on to the next section with a discussion with our panel. I'll start with a couple of questions to start a conversation, and then we'll answer questions from the floor. So again, I'll remind the audience, please feel free to type your questions into the comment box, and we'll start to address them one by one. So, I think open questions to all. As you guys have suggested tonight, landscapes are asked to do many things all at once. It's almost like asking us to solve the world, climate change or small scale. How do we get people engaged? How do we balance these multiple roles in design? And what guides your priorities when trade-offs are required?
Maybe I'll go first.
Yes.
Yeah.
I let Irvin take first.
Thank you, Irvin.
So being in NUS, one of the things that I'm involved in is also trying to get students to come to our program. And one of the first questions they always ask is, like, what is landscape architecture? Everybody understands what architecture is, but landscapes architecture is a little bit more difficult to explain. But specifically, at least in terms of design and what a designer is, the usual thing that I tell them is that a designer is somebody who knows a little bit about everything, but not enough of any one thing to call themselves anything other than a designer. So we're not horticulturists, we're not botanists, we're not ecologists. We're not in the construction side of things. We're not civil engineers, but you need to have knowledge in every single one of these pools to kind of condense them into a piece of work, right? And I think that's something that is a skill by itself, and it takes a lot of time and energy to kind of develop that skill. Yeah. So yes, we are asked to do many things. In fact, I think more often than not, the landscape is asked to do more than an aesthetic function, and I think that's actually the way forward, right? We should not be building landscape just for aesthetics anymore. They should have multi-purposes, kind of functions, and also multiple potential benefits, either direct or indirect. And I think this is something that we have to strive towards as a profession. Yeah, Anna?
Yeah, I think, in terms of how we actually balance the priorities and how do we get the priorities. I think for Sisters Island itself, we do spend a lot of time just understanding the context, because a marine park in Singapore, this is the only one. So there's a lot of time spending really just understanding the marine ecosystem, talking to a lot of different specialists, talking to the friends of marine park, to actually understand the area and what is needed, and then also understanding what NParks want to really open a marine park that people can access. So I think those are things that as you talk to people a little more, understanding their needs, that is where you have you kind of determine the hierarchy of the needs that is for the project. So that is really something that we take into consideration a lot in SCLD, in terms of really understanding the different stakeholders, and the stakeholders including the animals, not just humans lah. So that is something that I think we do quite often in our projects. So yep, I hope that answers the question.
No, I think that's important to hear because very often we have limited budgets, especially government projects. We all know how limited it is. And to hear that animals or fauna and wildlife are as much a stakeholder is very important. And I think that that probably is your guiding principle as you design. Would that be right to say that?
Yeah, I mean the budget is always a very important a criteria as well. So we try to do what we can within the budget. Kind of do little, but the impact goes a long way. So that is how we kind of trade it off as well. When we negotiate with the client on what is the emphasis or what is the priority in terms of the project.
Anush, I hear you nodding away. Are you dying to jump in?
No, I totally agree. From an ecology perspective, we are on the side which is good to have. Yeah. Often the focus is to have a multifunctional landscape which is good for public use. Serves functions like stormwater management, is lush and green. And one may argue, okay, if we do all of this, it naturally creates an ecologically valuable landscape. I think that can be questioned. So if I had a silver bullet or a magic wand, with competing resources, I usually fight for microforests. In our landscapes, if we can have a little patch of forest, which is unmanaged at its best, or very very little managed, then it creates a refuge. And if we can have many of these refuges, that creates nodes for biodiversity to thrive, and that becomes so much more richer and meaningful over time. That'll be my little snippet.
Anton? No, I think that's really, really quite cool because I think that the key is to do what we can. And I think there's a coming question up for you later, like how can we scale up these efforts, But yes, I'll let Anton continue.
Yeah. When you say about we have a multiple role in a project, that's really true. And think recently landscape architect profession is getting more respected. Yeah, and I think it's time for us to really learn about the soft skill of main management and how to convince clients and architects, because when we work with other professions, we have to convince them first, right? And I think that's the skill that's very much, we know already ecology is nice, biodiversity creation is good, right? But the question is really how we can sell this to people, and especially for projects in Indonesia is so difficult. It could be like 20 years behind Singapore, right? They're starting adapting to resilience design, right? So we need a courage, we need a lot of knowledge to convince the stakeholders and to the architects. If we design a landscape that related with the buildings, we need to understand structures, a lot of other factors. And I think the most important is that sometimes we become a contractors for our projects in developing cities, right? Because there's a trade-off. We can design a very beautiful rendering, nice detailed drawing, but if we don't have a good supplier, good nursery, good contractors, it will be wasted, right? So I think that's important for for a project that Singapore has been nice, has been good. We have almost everything, right? But outside Singapore, there's still a lot of gaps that need to be filled in terms of the construction site. But I think it's encouraging, through these talks, Anuj, Ervin's as an educators also teaching the student, and Anna did a very amazing project that inspired. I'm sure a lot of people inspired by the projects, right? And it's very encouraging for our professions.
No, I think that's a wonderful observation and contribution, Anton. We spoke about how landscape architects are asked to do many things, and Anna concluded that research and design has to go hand in hand. And you're now just telling us that we also now need to be contractors and developers to pull everyone together, because if in order to bring this forward, we need to be a bit of everything. So I think that's a wonderful challenge, and I see. I'm glad that we're all very excited about facing up to this challenge. And now we have a whole bunch of other passionate designers from the floor who are eager to ask some questions. And so I will direct the questions to different individuals. I'll start with Anush first. So there's a question from Victor. Based on your studies, do you find it possible to integrate biodiversity elements into landscape structures at a larger scale, sort of beyond just the small features? And then I'll combine it with a question from Mahesh. He's asking, can the Orchard Road design method also serves as a model for other countries? If adapted, could it work well in a place like Sri Lanka? He would like to hear your opinion on its suitability.
Great questions, and I think they are so related. So when we are on the drawing board, we want to think about cost, phasing, time frame, and be very strategic about what we're doing where, right? I think as professionals, we all understand that. So some of the ideas I presented and projects I presented earlier were straddling scales. So the nest boxes and all that are very targeted. And we do them either as pieces of art and function, or in places where landscape may just be starting, right? Trees are very small. You don't have enough nesting spaces for animals. So they need a kickstart, head start. So let's place those in, be as naturalistic as possible. But if there is a design element, okay, go all out and create something beautiful. However, we can't scale up expensive interventions, for hectares and kilometers. So there we often take a landscape approach and, look at the easy wins, right? We might start with, okay, just creating small microforests, okay, or introducing a light touch, add more native plants, add more flowering plants, or be a little bit more Anton, introduce more water-based landscapes. That does the magic often. So I don't have an easy answer, but at larger scales, we have to look for strategic acupuncture, so to speak, right, that have a bigger impact. And that's what we go for typically. We also quantify these impacts, these small scale interventions often have ripple effects. And I think that's beautiful to see. Yeah.
Okay, I hope that answers Victor's and Mahesh's question. Next up, we have a question for Anna. Well, we have two questions for Anna, I think. Yes. So how long, this is from Glenn, how long was the EIA study report and approval take for the project? Yes.
Okay, this one, I mean, it's very practical. I think the EIA studies is done way back in 2018. So it was during the time that I think EIA was still kicking, still coming up and about in Singapore, I think, to be a guideline. So if I'm not wrong, it took quite a while. I mean, we got the team to come in to actually do the the mapping of the coral location, the mapping of the terrestrial environment, what are the trees that is there, what are the animals that is on the island itself. If I'm not wrong, I think it was a year maybe or so, because I think MPAX did another feasibility study before they actually called the consultant team on board. So this one, I don't have an exact answer to it, but yeah, it's being done, but it's way back in 2018, before COVID.
I think it's quite clear, from this question and from the answer, is that a lot of these projects take a long time for it to come to fruition, I think, and it's a collaborative involvement from different partners. Okay, and now so we move on now to two questions from Irvin from Vic Dulong. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. The use of AI raises important ethical questions. AI models are trained on existing data, which could lead to a lack of originality or homogenization of design styles if not used thoughtfully. So how can landscape architecture programs effectively integrate AI tools into their curriculum to both enhance students' technical skills and preserve their core design sensibilities, thereby preparing future professionals to lead rather than simply execute a more automated and data-driven practice? That is an excellent question, Vic.
Okay, so let me try to break this down. There are ethical questions, definitely. The use of AI models that were trained on publicly accessible but copyrighted data is actually a big legal problem. But that's not something that we can deal with, not at least within this discussion here. But there are some models which are actually licensed correctly. So if I'm not mistaken, your Adobe suite of generative AI tools are actually licensed internally because Adobe is big enough to have enough images to kind of train their own models. There are many others which do not. There are many others in the wild which basically just ripped off every other person's work. So there is a big ethical dilemma at this point in time. But like I said, that goes a little bit beyond what we should discuss here. Now, the next question is whether or not or how we should integrate this into the curriculum. If you had read into the undertones of my presentation, you will realize that I'm actually a little bit cautious about overly introducing AI into our curriculum. And this is exactly what you are saying, right? How do we preserve their core design sensibilities? The problem with AI now that I see is that it is so real, so quick that students start being lost. They don't know what to do. They lose their imagination. They lose their imaginativity because they are confronted with something that is completely real, like extremely real, especially in the latest versions of this Gemini and stuff. It is so real that your mind is now fixated, and it's very different from something like a sketch, something like like a party model, something that we all as landscape architects back when we were students all started with. So I'm very hesitant to push for this, especially at the early stages of the educational process. I think that's also one of the reasons why my course is actually at level 4, level 5, because you need to be a good designer first before you start taking on these tools. Otherwise, you are blinded by the tool, you are kind of restricted by the tool, and then of course you cannot operate in the real world, right? So I think that's something that we have to be very cautious about. And in fact, I ran the AI studio twice, and I was so disheartened by what I saw that I probably not going to run it again. I'm going to go and try to do something else instead. Water sensitive design, like Anton. I was disheartened by what I saw because there were students who really just froze. They spent like the whole semester talking to ChatGPT and DeepSeek and whichever ones, trying to get ideas. Then they went to Midjourney to get all these fantastical looking images, but they could not translate it. They struggled to translate it over, and that's not because the AI tools are lacking. That's because they did not. They're not skilled enough as a designer to kind of translate it over effectively. Way back when, when we started using Pinterest, a lot of tutors got really worried, like, oh no, you're just using Pinterest, this is not design. It's worse now because at least in the Pinterest era, you kind of like, you look through 1,000 images and then you pick 5, right? You there's a selection process, even though it's very visual. It's, you're kind of deciding, oh, I like this look, I like that look. Now you're just like, giving it a prompt and then you press enter and enter over and over again. So you saw some of those images that I had where there's this crazy mess of lines. That was that process. Press enter, press enter, press enter, press enter, and then try to pick one that kind of looks correct. And it's a very bad way to do design. On the flip side of it, I think if we start using AI, I won't say on the research side, but you have to have a lot more control over it, not on the generative AI side of things. to start using it in very specific instances. So, for example, can I, instead of using a very laborious urban thermal comfort kind of simulation model, use an AI-based model that can cut the time into half, and then I can test 1,000 different designs instead of just testing 2 in the same time. So that's a completely different use of AI. And at least in NUS, we have a course that is called AI for Design. That's not run by me, fortunately. And they are kind of seeding that information into it. But it's still really early days. AI is so new that it's really hard to kind of catch up, at least from a teaching point of view. Yeah. Okay, that's all.
All right. In consideration of time, thank you, Arvind. That was a very fruitful feedback, because that's something that we always consider as well. How do we use AI, or how can we use AI more fruitfully? I think is the question. We have more questions, but in consideration of time, we're probably gonna pick just a few quick ones, and then. So one question to anyone from the floor: if you had collaboration with the government for application of blue-green technologies, anything to share? This is a question from Enrico. Another open question from Jack Hu. Can anyone elaborate further on how current tech aid or new tech revolution can chip in to save and restore nature? So 2 broad questions. Take a pick.
Maybe I'll go for the second one.
Yes.
How can tech help us to save nature? Well, it's a big question. I think we now have more and more better tools to enable us to do this, right? Past few years, the conversation has been on carbon, better ways to sequester carbon. But I think we are moving towards tools that enable us to see holistic value of nature, right? And I feel until we value nature properly, we will not save it. So current methods have to go beyond carbon. We have to look at social costs, other biodiversity costs, and the list is very long. I won't read it here, but until we do that, I think it was going to be tough. Yeah, so we have to move there quickly. We have to mainstream conservation of nature, protection of nature in financial models, and I think we are getting there quickly.
I will try the question on the government blue-green something. It's actually more of a failure of it rather than success. And actually, Anton shared that image. So Anton shared an image of a canalization of Ciliwung River in Jakarta. My doctoral study was actually on the Ciliwung River. And what we were trying to do was to convince the local government that the canalization actually was a bad idea. We know it from history in Europe, where canalization has actually increased, not decreased, flooding risk. We know it from simulations as well. That was part of our study. That is actually going to make it worse. We had actually the actual simulations, like water running through it, and then showing that it's actually going to be worse. But it all fell on deaf ears because somehow or another the group could not get the government officials to, stop their, they call it normalization process at the time. So Anton, I know you are probably more involved in Indonesia, and maybe you also have similar thoughts about this.
Yeah. I think for developing countries, especially because everything has to be fast, right? And sometimes the decision is making from the top down, right? And mostly when we encourage about nature-based solution, we are talking at the management levels or below, right? While most of the decisions made by the governors or the top leaders directly, right? So and they want a fast result, so this always become the challenge, right? I think the silver lining is the approach from the Singapore government in 2006, right? 2006, when they try to introduce the ABC water design by doing a long-term project instead of short-term. If I can share, last time when I used to be work with dry cycle, we collaborate with the governments to create a ABC water design guidelines. So there's a collaboration between the governments with the consultants and the expertise to make this guideline and to be published to everyone, to developers, contractors, consultants, governments, policymakers to learn about this guideline. And also we have ABC Waters course professionals learning about the blue-green design. So everyone is on board and implement slowly from micro scale, and we have a pilot project of Bishan Park, right? And now everything is accepted in Singapore as a common design features. While in other countries, we can have a Tebet eco parks because we brought the government to Bishan Park. When they saw that, they love it, then they want to have the same. I think that's encouraging when we have successful projects, and that can be scaled up in many other countries as well through experience directly to the parks design. Otherwise, if we just theory, if they just look at the design report, design guideline, is very difficult for them to buy the idea. That's from my experience working with the governments in Indonesia countries.
Maybe I can kind of combine a little bit of the two questions. There was one on technology and how do we use it to, I don't know, improve nature itself. One of the biggest problems that we have faced is nature is extremely complex. To try to convert that into an equation of, I put this here, it will become better. It's actually extremely difficult, right? So a lot of the research that I'm seeing, in fact, a lot of the students that are doing research as well are trying to answer that question using AI. So not using ChatGPT or Midjourney, that kind of stuff, but using AI to understand these complex systems, or rather to AI to use it to predict some of these complex systems, because that's something that AI is actually fantastic at, finding patterns that humans cannot find. Right, and that's something that I think potentially could be an area that we can look into. But this is really more of the research side rather than just pure on industry application at this point in time.
Yeah, I think we've spoken a lot about AI, about fauna tonight. And maybe for the final question of the night, we'll come back to people. I think there were two questions from the floor. One in particular was directed to Anna. This is from Ain Siafika. Do you collaborate with local communities in your Coral initiative beyond design stage? Are they involved in sustaining the project, and how do you measure success? And then the final question is another one involving community that I think we'll throw out to the floor. This is a question from Honey. I believe people's role in landscape architecture are often undervalued. So what's your view on involving communities in design, and what are the effective ways of achieving it?
Yeah, I think I will just answer the first one first, which is the people. I think in something that I didn't really get time to actually mention in my presentation is during the entire design process for the Sisters Island Marine Park, we actually involve the community quite a fair bit in terms of the Friends of the Marine Park. So like even during the design, before construction, before we finalize everything, we actually do have a tour. Like before the design, they actually got us on a guided tour for the consultant teams towards within the intertidal zones and all, to actually understand what the marine park is and what are the strengths that is in the park now. And with that, when we design during the design phase, we actually went back to the park again with the Friends of Marine Park to actually explain to them the development of what is happening, so they can like can give us a feedback in terms of like, this is where the kayak come from, this is where the current is a bit strong. So all this kind of thing, we actually do involve them in certain every stage of the project actually. So that is actually something that we actually put together, because to make sure that we don't just design top down, you see. So we also go bottom up as well. So MParks do help us to actually keep it get in contact with the ecologists, with the marine specialists, with the friends of marine park, which is the people that come. So these communities are the people that we are also designing for. So yeah.
Final question, anyone? Maybe Anton? You want to take this?
Yeah, landscape architecture role is undervalued, right? The view of involving community in design and the effective ways to achieve it. It depends, yeah. If it's public projects, which is very difficult for us to get public projects, right? And that's of course will be easier to involve community. But most of the projects involved is with the private sectors, and so the community involvement is very little, right? And in that way, we have to work very closely with the stakeholders, the owners, right? And that's the most tough part, because if it's a private sector's project, they are focusing more on the financial benefits, right? And while for us, we want to balance it with ecological creations, water system design. For example, the 3 projects I did with the developers projects, there's no involvement with the communities. There's no way that they want to waste time to involve communities. So we have to be the one that understand what is the community needs. We have to act as the users. We have to interview the people that stay around there and use that as the foundation for our design. And that's something that we always do when we do with a private developer. We try to get opinions from the people that stay around there informally. We don't do that just for the sake of a part of the contracts, right? But just do informal questionnaires, interviews, and observations. And I think that's the difference. Yeah? I'm focusing more about the private projects. With I believe a lot of landscape architects are involved more with the private sector's developments.
Okay, thank you very much again to our panelists and speakers for tonight. I've learned a lot myself, and I hope you guys have too. As we wrap up our event, maybe can I invite our guest speakers to share some final messages?
Yeah, I think if I may start, yeah, I remember I just have a questions about what's our takes for the next 5 to 10 years for the landscape architecture roles here, and I believe it's very important not just for us to do a good design, but to educate or to engage the contractors to do a better works, because in the end they are the one that do the maintenance, right? They're the one that will be living with the landscape that we design. And I see that a lot of difficulty in my projects outside Singapore. So the next 5 years is very important to promote the contractor industry. So not all landscape architects have to do design. They have to do the implementation. They have to learn these skills, right? The soil mixture, the vegetation, everything. I think that's very important. A role for not just design, but understand the site and the constructability, construction context.
Yeah, I think I'll go next. Yeah, I think for me the conclusion, one takeaway is really with all the AIs and all the technology that's coming up. I think we are really looking at how we can use this technology to actually convey some of the things that kind of put convey and convince people with this technology to that what we are doing and what nature needs. So it's easier instead of just writing a whole chunk of essay. Sometimes AI even getting a image reference and things like that, just to give them what you expect, is something that we can use the technology for as well. So it's part of really creating awareness, taking advantage of the benefits of what AI or what the technology can give us. Because ultimately, I think as landscape architects, we do wear a lot of hats in our role. So we are kind of like the balancing force that kind of, understand the engineers, understand the ecologies, understand what the architect authorities, guidelines and all, and putting it together to make a project. So to me, that is really key. That is something that we need to learn. That is something that we need to make use of the technology that is up and coming, to kind of like pull it all together, so that we are the communication bridge for across the different specialists that we always encounter.
Okay, maybe I'll go next. So first and foremost, from what I see, at least in the next 5 years, AI is not going to take your job, right? I say that with quite absolute certainty because our job is not creating images or text or music. Our job is creating physical spaces. And exactly what Anton is saying, somebody needs to be there to check the soil mixture, is it correct? Check whether the plant material is correct. Is it even planted correctly? A lot of that on the ground knowledge, on the ground expertise, the robot's not going to do it, right? So we are relatively safe in that. That said, I believe what Anna said is also valid because we do need to upskill. And that's the reason why I came back to teach, because we are not skilled at all in a lot of these digital tools. And my biggest worry is that we do not know that the tool exists. If you do not know that the tool exists, you're ignorant to that possibility of it kind of happening. And I think that's something that we need to really fix. And so I think, again, you should adopt technology, but just be smart about how and when exactly you use it. And of course, your jobs are safe. Don't worry. My job maybe not so much, but your jobs are safe.
All right. On that bigger note, many professions have declared climate emergency. And while I'm not a landscape architect, I'm an ecologist who works with landscape architects. I feel, nature is worth fighting for, right? We cannot not fight for it. So we all collectively have a big responsibility. It motivates me every day. I hope that motivates all of us every day. And, not fighting is not an option. So let's keep going.
I think that is a beautiful summary, Anush. I think that really summarizes the importance of landscape architecture and highlights the incredible potential of what we do. I hope you guys leave inspired by the ideas that I shared tonight. And we invite you to share your thoughts and suggestions on tonight's session. Please feel free to jot down any topic requests for the next IFLA Talk and Share series as well. Your input will help us deliver better and more impactful discussions. We thank you again for sharing the evening with us, and we'll see you all again. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.